Hello, my friends at St. Andrews. I just take opportunity to say my love to you guys. And it's been 20 years since I first visited St. Andrews. So this is very special, fond memory to me and to my family. And also I really want to say thank you for your faithful support and prayers for me and my family and our work here. Well, this year, Ulzi's project is helping children through the winter kits, winter clothes, and also disciple them in the faith. So it's grown up to now this year 1,200 children, and she is quite busy. Whereas myself, I try to place myself strategically to coach and mentor young emerging leaders and help them. And our kids are growing up. Our oldest is now turning 14, and the youngest is now 8 years old in 2 months. So thank you all of your prayers, and I hope sometime the Lord is willing, we're gonna see you then. And God bless you. Bye-bye.
Hey, look, it's lovely to be here again, and lovely to see you all, and to come back. Last time I was here was November 2020, so there's been a fair bit of the sea's gone in and out a few times since then. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to sort of update you a little bit on what's happening in Mongolia, but also Cambodia, because that's Asian Outreach, that's our other field of work. And Angela, my wife Angela and I, who's in the photo there, we had the opportunity in September last year to head back to Asia for 2 months. So we spent a month in Mongolia and almost a month in Cambodia. And the first 2 weeks of that time, just Angela and I were in Mongolia, so we were able to really reconnect with the team, with Badmaa and Ulzi and the team, and really spend some quality time with them. They hadn't seen anybody for 3 years, so it was a real meaningful time. So what I'm hoping to do this morning is really share with you a message of hope, and also, and I love that prayer, that the kingdom in Mongolia is really growing. So you're going to see that this morning as I share some stories with you. But I want to encourage you that you're part of that message of hope. You guys are such a large part of that in terms of your support for what's happening in Mongolia. So I want to read the scripture first, Isaiah 61. I'm going to turn my back to read it, because I can't see it on that screen. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and to release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendour. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that will have been devastated for generations. Right, Mongolia. Mongolia is an interesting place. It's, for those who need a short lesson on where it's located geopolitically, up the top is Russia, and below is China. And for the last 3 years, China's been closed, so the border with China's been closed. That has hurt Mongolia a lot with their economy. And then, of course, Russia, with its war with the Ukraine, has really created some issues as well. So, for a little brief history lesson on Christianity in Mongolia, 30 odd years ago the Russians withdrew from Mongolia. Some of our people went through there at that time, discovered there were 4 Christians in all of Mongolia. That's changed significantly. Now in Mongolia there are about 70,000 Christians, And most of those are located in the capital city, Ulaanbaatar. There's 300 small churches in Ulaanbaatar, but still the majority of rural Mongolia, that vast nation, is still unreached for Christ. And that's really where Badmaa and his team have their efforts and energy, is in rural Mongolia, those parts of Mongolia that are not yet reached. So first, once again, warm greetings from the team in Mongolia, the Genesis Asian Outreach team, and Badmaa and his family. And Badmaa's mentioned his children, Emerald, Pearl and Jack, and they're growing up and they're wonderful kids. So while Angela and I were in Mongolia for those first 2 weeks, Badmaa took us to the very west of Mongolia. It's 1,500 kilometres from the capital. It's quite isolated. It's very close to the Russian border and the border with Kazakhstan. And in the last couple of years, they've been working in that area, looking to plant some churches in 3 villages that are unreached at the moment, 30, 60 and 120 kilometres from the major town in that area. And the guy that you can just see in the orangey sort of white top, his name is Pastor Agi, and he's leading the church planting work there. And the guy that Badmaa and I are praying for is his assistant, Brother Gumbar. So we stood on a mountain. This is where we are. We're standing on a mountain and we're praying over these 3 towns that we can sort of see 1 or 2 of them in the distance. And praying that with the Winter Kits program that they were going to do this year, that was going to be the gateway or the way they could get into these towns and start sharing the gospel. While we were in Western Mongolia, we also went and visited this community. So if you might remember when I was last here, I may have told the story about this family on the left, Bayam Monk and Baloma, or if you get our communications, you will have read about it. So I'm going to quickly recap that story because it's a great story of hope. So 4 years ago, our team came to this family's gur and visited this family, 5 children. Mum and Dad were drunk and were comatose when they visited, so they left some food and said, we'll come back the next day. This family, one of the children was going to be the recipients of a nice warm jacket and a pair of boots for that winter. So they'd been identified by the local church as a family that was really in need. The next day we arrived back at the family's gur. Mum and Dad were sober. We shared the gospel with them, prayed with them. They were radically delivered of their alcoholism. And so we got to meet Mum and Dad. We got to meet Mum. Unfortunately, Dad passed away early last year. His life caught up with him, unfortunately. So we got to spend time with Mum and the community that they've now grown as a church community in their little area where they live, their slum area where they live. There's 20 worshipping adults and about 20 or 30 kids that are part of this little church that has formed in the last 4 or 5 years out of that one day. So we got to speak with her and she shared stories about the growth of the little church, her own growth in her own faith. It's still very raw, it's still a very new faith, but it was just a wonderful story. And then that night, we went to the church on the other side of town. This was the church that's been discipling and working with this community. And so we went to the church that night and we had a meeting and I preached a message on healing. And I just gave some real practical applications around how to pray for people for healing. In Mongolia, in rural Mongolia, anyone of any age seems to have significant health issues. It's the diet, the weather conditions, 9 months of winter. Everybody seems to have something wrong with them, either reasonably insignificant or reasonably significant. So giving them tools to pray for each other in a health system that's not working seemed to me to be quite a message of some sort of relevance and hope for them. So anyway, I've done quite a bit of work in this area and praying for people for healing. Ministered overseas in that area, so on and so forth. So anyway, I delivered this message, and at the end of the message, I asked them if they would apply some of the teaching that I'd given them and pray for each other. And there were 3 ladies that had come from the community earlier that morning where that family is, that had come to the church for the meeting. Very new Christians, very raw in their faith, and I'd done a little bit of teaching on a word of knowledge. I'm not sure if you know what a word of knowledge is, but sometimes God gives you a word of knowledge for healing and you can bring that word of knowledge, and God often wants to heal a person through a word of knowledge. One of these ladies picked up on what I was saying, prayed, and God gave her a word of knowledge for one of the church members around a specific form of cancer she had, and also around another illness that she was carrying. And they were able to pray for her, and hopefully God was able to heal this woman. I'm not sure what the outcome was, but it was just really encouraging that these brand new Christians, God is using them in their community to grow. We were there for the first 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, 3 of the New Zealand team turned up, and the guy with the blue hat there is Pastor Tugi. You may recall he's part of the Asian Outreach team. He's our chair of our board, and also he's heavily involved in the church planting side of what we're doing in rural Mongolia. So he took us out to the south part of Mongolia, to Batoltsi, which is a town that we've been visiting. I've now visited 3 times. So this was our first visit in 3 years, and we were able to reconnect with the church there. The church plant all those years ago was very small. There was only a handful of people, and it's subsequently grown. He's been going back regularly over the last 3 years to visit this town. So the first day we were able to climb up a hill behind the town and pray over the town. And then we had meetings at the church. My wife reconnected with this lady after 4 years and heard her story. And her story is one of when we first met her, when Angela on the left first met her 4 years ago. She was a very new Christian. In fact, she probably didn't even realize she was a Christian. She was sort of exploring her faith. 4 years later, she's now, and at that time, Angela had a word of encouragement for her. Someone from a friend of ours from New Zealand had said there would be a lady with a red coat. Angela was able to see that this was the lady, and she was able to bring a word from New Zealand to her about her faith, and that greatly encouraged this lady. And then 4 years later, she's now one of the sort of senior leaders in this church, has really gone on with her walk with Jesus. And then there was this other lady, the bee lady. When we first went to this town 4 or 5 years ago, we had a business meeting. Very unexpectedly, we turned up at this public meeting room, and there was a business meeting going, and we were just hurriedly asked to speak at this business meeting. So there's 40 or 50 business people there. This lady was there, I call her the bee lady, because she owned some beehives, and she heard what we were saying about integrity in business at the business meeting. And later that afternoon, she came to where we were staying, and she walked in and she said, "Who are you people? Why are you here?" And we said, "We're New Zealanders, and we're Christians from New Zealand, and we've come to share a message of hope." And she wasn't a Christian, and she said, we said, "Look, we've got a meeting later on this evening. Would you like to come along and be part of the meeting?" And she did. And she got prayed for, and she was healed of something radically that evening. And that picture on the left was the next day she brought a whole lot of her beekeeper ladies to the meeting. And they were prayed for and so forth. And she became part of the church. She became part of the local church. And this is us reconnecting with her 4 or 5 years later. As we do in our Christian walk, she's had some struggles with the church. Some people have offended her at times, and she's gone away and then come back. But she said her family's actually, her husband and her children have since become Christians. And she said her husband, who works now down in the Gobi in the bottom part of Mongolia, driving trucks, he's on the phone to her every day, reading from the Bible, praying for her, praying for their family. He's in fact probably more full on than she is. So a wonderful story about how God uses a business meeting, one person from that business meeting who was meant to, and who had influence in that town to bring others to faith. And then this year we were able also to be involved in the Winter Kits project. So as Badmaa mentioned, Altsi's the one who leads that program. This year they're going to have over 1,200 children that are going to receive a brand new jacket and a pair of boots. What surprised me about this project was the quality of the jackets. I mean, you have to have good quality jackets if you're going to school in minus 40 degree centigrade temperatures. The quality is incredibly good. And the value is amazing for what we have to pay for those jackets and those boots. It's incredible value. So we were able to go to a local church. We were able to see the winter kits being distributed this year to the children, and I was quite interested to watch the children filing into the local church, and the mum and dads were filed into another room and presented the gospel for 20 minutes while the kids were receiving their jackets and boots. So it was a very cool opportunity. Yeah. And one of the surprising things about this day was the first day they'd been distributing winter kits for 2022. It snowed. It was the first snow they'd had that in October, so for the year. And Altzi said to me, every time we do the first winter kits of the year, it snows. And the beanies. So I know a number of you here are involved in this. We part of the Winter Kits ministry, the knitting of beanies, so thank you. They're so gratefully received, and obviously you'll see all the photos, the kids wearing the beanies. They love their colourful beanies and the different styles and different shapes and sizes they come in. So acknowledge you again and thank you for those who are involved in this ministry. And then there's life skills. So the other big project we do in Mongolia is we have the life skills project. And that is where we go into Mongolian state schools and private schools, and we teach them what we call life skills. So things like respect, thankfulness, forgiveness. Those values are not inherent in their culture. They're not things that they're brought up with like we are in our culture. And so over the 10 years that we've been teaching this program now in schools, 10,000 children have been through this, have been taught these values, and what Badmaa and his team are telling me is that slowly the Mongolian society is changing because of these values. So it's a really important ministry to kids and also mums and dads. Mums and dads get involved in this as well. They come in for night sessions. They get taught about how to be better mums and dads, how to be better husbands and wives, and they're just how to, and they get taught these same values. And the other thing we did while we were there was we took Badmaa and his team away for a couple of days to a retreat, and we just loved on them. We just encouraged them, prayed for them, we did activities with them and just spent time with them. They're really under the pump. It's not easy being there in Mongolia these last 3 or 4 years. So we just hung out with them and just really just spent time with them. So that was really really fantastic. Getting to know them a lot better. And then the second part of our trip was Cambodia. I'll race through these slides, but Cambodia. So I took Kirsty with me, who's on my left. Kirsty works for me, does all our communications piece. So it was really important that this time I thought that she came up to Cambodia at least and had a look and saw what we were doing, and it was really life-giving for her. And on the right is from my church, a Baptist church in Auckland, our youth and young adults pastor. So she came with us as well, met us there. And Cambodia is a smaller country than Mongolia, with a smaller population, with a larger population, and we're in the northeast part of Cambodia, in a province called Stung Treng, in a town called Stung Treng, very close to the border with Laos and Vietnam. The border of Vietnam, sort of 120 kilometres away to the right, and the Thai border is also very close. So in that area we own some land. We own 10 acres. Our team operates from this area. We have a big building on there called the Hope Centre. That's that colourful building in the middle of those slides. And we host teams there. We have classrooms in that building where we provide education, computer studies, English, and also we bring pastors and church leaders in for meetings. We also bring local government officials in for meetings. So it's a real multi-purpose sort of venue. We can host teams of up to over 30 people in this building. And also we run all our projects out of there. So I'll talk a little bit more about those projects in a minute. We have about the same number of staff, about 15 staff that we do in Mongolia, so similar size staff, but doing different stuff. So one of the things we do is we work in a lot of villages in the province, and so heading out to those villages, meeting people, riding on the back of a motorbike or the back of a ute is how you get around in those places. So one of the projects in Cambodia we do a project where we empower families, mainly women actually, because the women are the decision makers in rural villages in Cambodia. And so we teach the women a number of things that they would not normally have knowledge about. So one of those is their own health, women's health. Their family health is another thing we teach about. We teach them also about domestic violence. There's a lot of this. This is a significant issue in villages, in these rural villages. We also teach them about human trafficking. There's a lot of trafficking going on in these villages at the moment, where people are coming down from Thailand or China and trafficking young women into other countries for various reasons, and they don't have education or knowledge around this, so we train on this. So that's one of the projects we do, is empowering mainly women in these communities. We also provide clean water, so we drill about 50 wells in and around the Stong Trang area every year. And clean water is a significant issue in these areas. So the Mekong River runs down through Stong Trang, but it's dirty water. There's a lot of water, but it's dirty water. It's disease-ridden, and we know if you live in an area where you don't have access to clean water, you can't work because of sickness. Your kids can't go to school because they're sick, and that affects income, and that means poverty remains still a significant issue. So providing clean water to communities is a key to also being able to share the gospel. We work in conjunction with pastors in the area, and we partner with them to identify villages and that need water, and that he or she can work with to share the gospel. And the other project we do in Cambodia is assisting children to school. So 200 children from poor rural families, we sponsor them to go to school. We provide their uniforms, their backpacks, their books, and also their school fees. And we, from the New Zealand point of view, we are looking to fund about 70 children this year to remain in school in Cambodia and rural parts of Cambodia. Also, if they don't, they work with their mums and dads in the fields. They don't get an education, and we know as New Zealanders that education is key to opportunity and to getting people out of the poverty cycle. So we're really, really passionate about this project as well. And then there's this, just when you're there, you just go and visit churches. And this is a typical church in rural Cambodia. They don't even have a building, they just have a tarpaulin. The day we visited was a Wednesday afternoon. Everybody came, and obviously to see some Westerners turn up, but it was lovely just to spend time with these folk, hear their stories, pray with them praying for us praying for them, and just understanding what their lives are like and how they live their lives. This is another little church that actually has a building, and the guy at the bottom there, his name is Pastor Sanat, and I'll tell you a little story about him. He's only a wee man. He's about this high. He's about 5 foot tall, but boy, he's got a passion for the kingdom. And when I met him about 6 or 7 years ago, when I first went to Cambodia, and he'd been linked in with our guys for a few years before that. When he first linked in with us, he was very new to the district where he'd settled his family, and he was ostracised in the villages that he was living near to. Nobody wanted anything to do with this Christian pastor, and he figured out that if he could align himself and partner with an organisation that was bringing hope to the community that he was living in, then he may have a chance to share the gospel. So he asked our guys with the water projects that we're doing at the time, could he help us? And we said, yes, we would love your help. At the time we were doing, I don't know if you've heard of these things called bio-sand filters. They're sort of a concrete box about this big. You pour dirty water on the top and clean water comes out the bottom. And we were doing a number of those a few years ago. We don't do them anymore, but we did over 1,000 in the area where we were based. And he decided that he would like to partner with us in those. So he said, bring all the concrete molds to my house. I will invite the people and the families that we know that need clean water to my house. That we can build the molds, the bio-sand filters together. We'll then take them to their properties, install them, show them how to run them. And my opportunity is to build relationship with these people and share the gospel. And he's done that really successfully. So he was telling us that in that time, 70 to 80 families have come to Christ over the years that he's been doing this. And he's now got 5 young men that he is discipling that are planting churches further out in other towns and villages. So he's a key guy in the area that we work in. And I love the fact that he's also a tent maker. So he's not relying on people to donate money to him for him to live. He runs guinea fowl, chooks, ducks, got thousands of them running around his property, and that's how he makes his income. So he has a little bird sanctuary thing going that where he makes his living. So wonderful hospitality. He's got his own little church, and and so forth. And then one of the other little highlights for me of this trip in Cambodia was 4 years ago when I was, or 4 or 5 years ago when I was, one of the last trips I was there, I was with another Kiwi couple and my wife, and a pastor invited us to this land here and asked us to pray over this land and pray for a church that would be established in this area, and there would be something come available where they could build the church. So we go back there and there's the church. So God answered those prayers. We didn't know that there'd been a church built there in that time, but there it is. And there's the custodian of the church. He's handicapped, he's in a wheelchair, and he said to me, we're so thankful that we now have a church here, but we don't have a toilet. So when I'm the custodian here, I'm here all day, every day. I have to go to a nearby village if I need to go to the toilet. So that's a real hassle. So I'm looking at sort of trying to help that situation. I mean, providing a simple toilet is not that hard, but it's just something that is often outside the scope of what they can afford to do. So that's a little bit of a roundup of my time in our time this year and last year in Cambodia and Mongolia. I'm about to head back to Cambodia and Laos in a couple of weeks. I'm not going to talk too much about what we're doing because it's quite sensitive, but there will be some work that we're doing in Laos that will be expanding the kingdom. It's new and exciting, and I'm really looking forward to going up there. So please pray for that. Pray for us as we look to expand our work into this country, as we look to bring the same projects that we're doing in Cambodia into Laos. Please pray that we would have, we'd have wisdom around what's the right thing to do, and 2, we would be able to partner with the local Lao church pastors and leaders who are often in quite difficult circumstances. So I'll leave it at that. I am heading back to Mongolia later this year. I'm taking a Kiwi team of 6 or 7 up to Mongolia in September, October. So we'll be there for a couple of weeks. We are going to go to Western Mongolia this time. The harvest is ripe out there. We want to be part of that and just explore how we can help the church out there later this year. So thank you for your prayers, for your support of Badmaa and his family. I know I speak to Badmaa almost every week. He's so grateful that you guys over many years have supported him and his family. And we're talking about him coming to New Zealand next year. So I know you guys would love to have the opportunity for him to come and speak here if we can make that happen. So 2024, look out. So thank you.